Welcome to the Progress Texas Happy Hour.
Welcome back to the Progress Texas Happy Hour, y'all. I'm podcasting director Chris Mosier.
And I'm Advocacy Manager Reagan Stone, joining you from my home in far west Texas, Brewster County, population 9,500.
That's right. Contrary to common conception and contrary to election maps and certainly contrary to the overwhelming tone that we have at our Texas state capitol in Austin, there are progressive people in every corner of Texas, from our biggest cities to our smallest towns. Texas is full of decent, kind, accepting, and justice-loving people. It's just that in some places in Texas, maybe they're a little harder to see, and turnout is an issue too, which we'll get to here in just a bit.
Well, through gerrymandering, as you said, Chris, and the aggressive nature of MAGA Nation, which tends to obnoxiously dominate rural Texas, progressives and Democrats in smaller towns and out in the country tend to lay low and far too often avoid gathering around their common values. In my opinion, we're falling short of truly realizing our political leverage.
And there's a group out there that agrees, and they're looking to change that, to activate rural progressives, to unite them in common cause, and to help them coalesce into their proper political position as a statewide force in Texas. And that's the 134 PAC. Their declared purpose is to advocate, connect, and educate organizers, activists, candidates, and urban Democrats about the needs, difficulties, and challenges of rural Democrats, to provide assistance, mentorship, networking opportunities, and other resources to build a better Texas by growing rural Democratic county parties and increasing the competitiveness of Democratic candidates throughout rural Texas.
Both Chris and I will be participating in the 134 PAC first statewide conference and summit in Bastrop this June. We're both excited, and we've gathered some of the interested parties to talk about the PAC, the event, and what we're looking forward to sharing as well as learning.
First, we have Steve Bridges, who's the local Bastrop organizer of the event, happens to be a distant cousin of mine from back on the South Plains, and also recently is the former Bastrop County Democratic Party chair. Steve, great to see you.
Well, thank you, Chris. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. I appreciate what you're going to do for us at the summit that's coming up June 13th and 14th. Chris is going to MC our fundraising banquet on Friday night, which is going to be a lot of fun. You may want to attend if you're a fan of Ann Richards, because she is going to be there. Yes, Ann Richards is going to be at our banquet.
Well, that's true, but let's not spoil the surprise. Let's hang on to that for just a second.
Also with the 134 PAC, Carla Schoonover Porter is a co-founder of the org, its county services director and chair. She also serves as the Palo Pinto County Democratic Party chair. Welcome, Carla.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Very good. And taking part in the event and returning to the podcast, one of our favorites, Nancy Thompson. She's one of our most renowned progressive warriors here in Texas, founder of Mothers Against Greg Abbott, nationally recognized grassroots media org, which has expanded since into Mothers for Democracy. Nancy has been a very direct inspiration for those of us here in Texas who have taken our progressive advocacy into the digital media space with her terrific messaging work. And it's always great to see you, Nancy. Welcome back.
I'm so happy to be here, Chris. Thank you.
Well, let's start with the basics, y'all. Activating and mobilizing progressive people in the rural parts of Texas has long been a dream and was actually once reality. Prior to the red domination of Texas that's been going on for well over 3 decades now, tell us about what 134 PAC knows about who's out there waiting to be organized and what life is like for progressive folks living in red rural Texas. Carla, can you start us off?
Yes, I will. Life in rural Texas as a progressive can sometimes be quite challenging. And, the 134 PAC represents, originally the 134 counties west of I-35. We've since extended out to help other counties, but life in the 134 in West Texas in the last 30 years has been very difficult. And as we go out and we organize in these counties, we see right away that there's very little, if any, existence. Brewster County is very remote and very rural. So we've been out to those counties, and what we find is it's very difficult, first of all, to locate these Democrats, unless they've, of course, voted in a Democratic primary. So one of our goals is to try to reach as many people as we can, whether that's social media, personally, texting, calling, to create networks within those communities. Because if they do not have any party at all, I mean, it's hard to even know how they vote, what they think, or how to attract them, right? So, that's part of our strategy, and it's certainly grown over time. But, we're a small PAC, grassroots, and so we try to have those conversations in small groups.
I'm going to pass it over to Steve. Can you add to this a bit about living in rural Texas, as well as some of the magic, per se, you've used in organizing in your different roles?
Well, I've been involved. What got me involved in active organizing politics was Beto O'Rourke when he ran for Senate. So since 2017, I've been working this. And in traveling the state with him, going around the state, especially into far west Texas, it was amazing to see Democrats come out of the woodwork. One of the things that we want this summit to achieve is we want Democrats to know that there are other Democrats out there, that they don't need to be afraid, that they can put a yard sign in their yard or a bumper sticker on the car. And Beto was really good about bringing these people out. So I hope the 134 PAC, with what we're doing with this summit, as we learn more about how to reach these people, will be able to achieve greater results.
Absolutely. I think of Beto O'Rourke as being real central to this conversation, especially, given the strategies that he's done traveling to all the counties of Texas, which is no small undertaking. And so that's interesting to come up. Nancy, over to you. Over the last 4 years, you've become very central to the thought process for progressive organizing in Texas. Tell us what you see as the basics of reaching out to folks out in the country and in the smaller towns of Texas.
Well, I think people want community now more than ever. And so we're finding ourselves in a period of time where a lot of people are divided up into boxes. And so I think that leads to a lot of tribalism. So you tend to see a lot of people vote as a tribe all over Texas. Like they tend to vote as not for Republicans because they believe in Republican values, but they tend to vote along tribalism. But what we need to do is come back to the values and go back to basic values, kitchen top issues, the values that are really important to all of us. And once we can talk to those talking points, I think we can finally start growing the Democratic Party, not just in rural Texas, but everywhere in Texas. So this means the values are important to all of us. So what's important to all of us? I mean, good jobs, high paying jobs, right? Public schools, very important. Just being able to afford health care for our families and being able to take care of one another. Also, I mean, we have to think a little bit differently. So we have seen across Texas that Texas is broken out into camps. So you're either an urban or a rural person, but I don't believe in any of those camps. I think we are all connected and we all depend on one another. So the more we start talking about how we're connected and how we need each other, I think that we can change the tone in Texas to do good things for all Texans, not just one group over the other.
Very good. So both Reagan and I have lived the rural Texas experience. I'm from Lubbock originally, and my grandparents were from out in the Bailey and Cochran County part of the South Plains, way out on the New Mexico border out there. My youth in rural Texas had very little to do with politics. I really wasn't thinking about politics until that time, and I moved to Austin in the early 90s. But I just remember lots of really kind people and lots of really understanding and accepting people in my personal family. My grandfather's best friend was a black man, which was kind of a strange thing perhaps back in that day, although we didn't think so at the time. Lubbock in particular is known as a place where there's a lot of conformity in Lubbock, but there's also a lot of rebellion in Lubbock. You think about people like Buddy Holly or people like Natalie Maines, and you kind of get an idea of what some folks in Lubbock think when they're asked to kind of fall into lockstep. And so there are a lot of folks who do it, but there are a lot of folks who don't. And I suspect that there are people in the smaller towns and cities kind of along the size of Lubbock that are in that same sort of mindset. It's funny, Kendall Scudder, who's the new chair of the Democratic Party of Texas, the state party, is going to be at the event, actually, that we're getting ready to talk about here. He talks about the fact that what we consider to be the smaller cities of Texas, just based on the size of Texas and the relative size to our major metros, towns like Lubbock or say Tyler or say Abilene or say San Angelo, in any other state, those would be fairly major metropolitan, population centers. And so there are those kind of factors to think about when we're talking about rural Texas. What does that really mean? There is kind of an overlap between rural and urban Texas for sure. Reagan, of course, is living the dream, as we mentioned, out in Brewster County right now.
Home of Big Bend National Park. That's exactly right, Chris. My experience has been in a few different ways. My wife, she grew up in Terrell, Texas, and I had a lot of my formative years were in San Antonio, but also some of my earliest years and a lot of my summers growing up were down in a town called Falfurrias in South Texas. Very similar to Alpine, where I'm calling in from right now. I just ended a term on the Alpine City Council. It was kind of like that childhood dream to be an elected official, but also being able to make a little noise and hopefully invigorate some young folks, some folks that aren't always, that might have different looks or different ways of talking in these communities, and definitely the folks that are on the other side of the railroad track, perhaps. And I think, in the way that I have seen in Brewster County in organizing, it is the folks that are typically on the other side of the railroad tracks that historically vote on the left, but more so historically have not been voted. And I wanted to share some stark statistics here. These are all from numbers that I pulled for advertising these statistics in the 2024 election back in November, but they come from the 2020 election turnout. And so looking at Texas as a whole, 66% of registered voters cast a ballot in 2020, but nearly 4.5 million more Texans were eligible. And I would say many of those were in rural Texas. Actually, in Alpine, or rather House District 74, which is currently headed by Representative Eddie Morales in the State House, about 52% of folks registered to vote turned out in that 2020 election. But when you actually go to voting age population, only about 78 of the 145,000 folks actually showed up. That's voting age population. And if you can't run the numbers quickly in your head, I did it for you. It's about 26.2%, a quarter of people that are able to vote in a House district that stretches from Eagle Pass and Del Rio through Alpine all the way to El Paso voted, a quarter of them.
I can imagine that those stats pretty much hold true, I would say, over a lot of Texas also.
And they're so different from a place like Austin or other major urban areas where nearly 9 out of 10 voters that are eligible show up every single time.
Right.
We had that problem in Bastrop County in the midterms in 22. We had everything on the table that could have inspired people to get to vote, including Roe. We had the Uvalde school shootings, 3 or 4 or 5 things. Anybody could have picked something. And yet 40% of the Democrats in Bastrop County did not go to the polls. And it's not because we didn't urge them. We sent every Democrat in Bastrop County an 8-page newspaper to the 25,000 Democrats in Bastrop County. We sent out texts and phone calls. We sent out push cards. We did everything we could to excite them to get them to the poll. And yet 40% of them chose not to vote. And I don't know why.
Yep. And so at Progress Texas, we are very keen on reaching and activating the folks you're exactly talking about, Steve. But I'm going to turn to you, Carla, for this next question. Over at that Rural Summit that's coming up in Bastrop, we're plugging here today. Carla, what should folks expect that are attending?
Well, what we hope to be able to achieve by this is to bring activists, candidates, potential candidates, organizers, voters and people who are just interested, whether they've ever voted or not, together in one location to be able to network and talk, give them a space that can create a coalition. That's basically our entire goal. But to hear, for example, one of the topics you talked about is the urban-rural divide. Well, we recognize that. And so if you look at our panels that we've created, they were created intentionally to address some of the issues that we as a rural PAC see, and that is women running for office in rural areas. It is just non-existent, and there's some, but not many. And it depends on what you consider rural. We looked at the urban-rural divide, and the reason we created this panel is because I see so many times on Twitter the comment that if rural Democrats would just vote, we would win every time. Well, I don't know that I agree with that every time, because if you look at the numbers, if every rural voter voted, it would definitely move the needle on some of those races, and probably some of them would have won. But there's more to it than that. And I think that the urban-rural panel was created so that we can have those conversations. Pooja will be on that panel, along with Ramon from Presidio County. So we have the most populated county, or one of them, and the least populated county chairs, both young, very smart people. We're going to have that conversation along with Carl Jones, which is probably an older Democrat, been around for a long time. And so I think that having that conversation will help a lot. And so the goal of this summit is to create those conversations, have urban-rural people together. That's the focus on that particular panel. There's other panels that address other issues that we see throughout rural Texas. So our hope for this summit is that when we leave, we will have created more activists, more engaged people, more connected, and a coalition of people that we can go forward with actually working together. So we want to create some action out of this that will help going forward.
DFW and North Texas friends, Progress Texas is excited to invite you to join us to celebrate our 15th anniversary in Dallas. Come meet and mingle with political movers and shakers, lawmakers, advocates and activists, and just plain cool Texans who, just like you, are digging in for progress in the Lone Star State and loving every minute of it. Tickets and sponsorship opportunities are available now at progresstexas.org. Thanks to generous folks like Howard Cleon, Charles Zeller, Pamela Pearson, Chuck Cruz, Amy Forehand, John Mazzaro, and many others for their kind support. Join them and us to celebrate 15 years of progress on Monday, June 9th in Dallas. Details and tickets now at progresstexas.org.
Steve, you guys have, as we've already talked about here, put together a really great list of speakers and panelists. It all starts off, as it should, I think, as Texas Democrats, with a party. On Friday night, I'm going to be there to host the likes of Nancy here. And as we mentioned, our brand new Texas Democratic Party Chair, Kendall Scudder, is going to be there on Friday. And as Steve mentioned a second ago, just shy of Ann Richards herself. What do we mean by that, Steve?
Well, there is a lady named Libby Valeri. She actually plays Ann Richards on stage, and she will be joining us to give her impression and her delivery of Ann, which I think is going to be very exciting for those of us that didn't get to meet her in person. That's going to be very exciting. We also have Susanna Schofel, which is a recording artist out of Austin, one of my favorites. She's going to join us for about an hour of music as well.
And Nancy, you're part of opening night on Friday. What are you most excited about in terms of participating in this Rural Texas Summit?
Well, I'm most excited about seeing everyone. I'm most excited about the speakers and getting to see some people who I consider really good friends and honestly the best of what Texas has to offer. I mean, these people that are all going to be showing up they're just so much fun to be around, and I just love them to pieces. So I can't wait to see everyone.
Very good. So to the Saturday panels, Austin State Senator Sarah Eckhart is going to come speak. She's the keynote on Saturday. I can't help but notice, and actually, Carla, you mentioned this just a second ago, that women are very much front and center of the conversation here, including a panel that you referred to, Women Running in Rural Texas.
Yes.
I'd like to get Carla and Nancy, if you guys would weigh in about how progressive women are going to kind of have to take a lead role with the revival of rural progressivism in Texas.
Right.
Carla, you go ahead.
Okay. Well, I love all of the panels, but this is probably my favorite because I've worked with every one of the ladies on this, from Laura Jones, and I don't know if she's actually announced yet, but she is running again.
Awesome.
Maggie Ellis, which she won her election. And then we have Terrace Goodwin from Bell County, a wonderful young lady, ran for county commissioner, very first time out. She was scared, young, but very accomplished. And we actually paid her filing fee grant. We have a filing fee grant. So we paid for her filing fee. So we followed her. She's one of our favorites. And she's such a great advocate for women and running for office. She has a good message that gives other women courage. And I think that's the key. Or what I see is that women who run for office, when they step forward, they give other women courage to do that. And so the goal of this panel was to be able to let the audience to see what it's like running for office and what did they learn. And every one of these ladies, I will say, have stepped up to say that they would be mentors for other women. So we're also trying to create that type of awareness that you're not alone. It's scary. It is. At times, especially out in Lubbock and in the far west Texas, it's really hard for women to step forward. But that was the reason for the creation of that panel. And so I think it's going to be a highlight, I hope. And I'm excited about that.
Nancy, what about you? What do you think?
Well, I think that women have some great stories to tell because they are living the experience. They're taking care of their parents, they're taking care of their children, they are volunteering in their communities. There is a lot of what runs across the country on free labor from women. And I think a lot of lived experiences, they're bringing a lot of those things to the table. But I think that one of the most important things that we can learn from electing women is that women tend to be empathetic, pretty good listeners. And I think they're going to be open-minded to listen to everyone, meaning that people who don't always agree with them on issues, they're most likely to circle back with some of these folks and try to meet them halfway and try to also get them to understand different perspectives of why maybe, a law wasn't passed or a rule wasn't passed or something happened. They're going to try to take care of their communities. And that's what we need right now. We need lots of people who really care about other Texans trying to take care of other Texans in our communities. Because if we don't start doing that, then our communities are going to fall apart. We already see right now in the upper state offices here in Texas that these people who are in charge of Texas care more about billionaires than they care about Texans. Mm-hmm. So the only way to build the Texas Democratic Party is going to be from the local level and moving it on up. So we take care of people at the local level, then we move it to the county level, then we move it to the city level, then we move it to the state level. We need to start rebuilding our party and start building it based on values and community and those issues that are important to all of us.
Absolutely.
I love that answer, Nancy. And part of that is something that Steve has invited me to do. Thank you, Steve, for the invitation to be on a panel. That panel is Talking with Your Rural Neighbors. And you've promised that, rather told me I'm the only progressive on there. We got moderates and maybe even conservatives on there. But that idea of speaking with your neighbors is central, obviously, to these discussions. Steve, can you talk about getting smaller town progressives to find each other and get that solidarity going? Give me some pointers of what I can share at the panel in a couple of weeks.
Well, one thing I think Democrats need to be ready for after the fiasco that has been the Trump administration is there are going to be a lot of disaffected Republicans that are going to be looking for somewhere else to go when they eventually realize the crazy that they've been a part of. And I think the Democratic Party needs to be open to them. But when they do come, when they do show up, we can't make them feel guilty. We can't point fingers at them. We have to say, you may have been wrong, but it's because you were lied to, that you were told things that weren't true. And that's one message that you're going to hear from Will Westmoreland, who sits on your panel. He's an Ohio farmer and a political consultant. And that's one of his main messages is don't make these people feel like they're dumb. So when we talk to rural Texans, we have to be one-on-one. We have to get down to the level and talk about things that we have in common. You know, most people are empathetic, caring people, I think. Maybe some of them are not, but I think most of them are. But we just need to get down on the level and have real conversations and not be agitated and finger pointing.
Yeah.
That's a super, super important point, and that's real central to what we do at Progress Texas is trying to provide, truth and reasonable explanation in the face of right-wing disinformation and hyperbole. That's very much what we're up against, and that's very true what Steve just said there, is that there's going to have to be a lot of understanding and compassion and reconciliation with people who we have been bitter enemies with, frankly. I mean, that's a harsh word to use, but absolutely political opponents in a very tough fight. And I wanted to throw in something here also, especially with the Trump tax cut that's so much in the news right now. We're talking about a very direct transfer of wealth of over $1 trillion in the form of benefits cuts from the least wealthy and most vulnerable Americans to the very wealthiest and most powerful politically and financially Americans. It's very much a direct wealth transfer. And when you start thinking about the way, voting lines are going to draw out across socioeconomic lines, that's a lot of Trump voters who are about to lose their health care, about to lose their benefits. I would throw out there, especially for you and Carla and Steve, and maybe for you too, Reagan, actually, how does that play out? How does that realization that these, a very stark realization that a lot of these people have very literally voted against their very own personal interests? Mm-hmm. How do we approach that when that realization begins to dawn? If the tax cut goes through as it is, which we haven't seen that yet, but if it does, it's going to be serious business for a lot of Trump voters. I
love 2 points, which maybe both came from President Obama, which maybe I wouldn't start off with saying that. This has been in the idea of who you should vote for decades, but are you better off 4 years ago? Right. And I think the fact of the matter, which, we hear about it every once in a while, but Democrats have been out of power, out of statewide office for over 30 years now. And the fact of the matter is, if things are getting better for you, where are you actually seeing that? Is that actually happening in your wallet? And of course, there's, some wages do increase slowly over time. But at the same time, the CEO pay or the pay of the folks that are going to Austin representing you is now 300 times what the average person is making as well, where it used to be 10 times back in the 70s and 80s. And the other part I'd add is, do you want to have a beer with the person you're voting for? And I know for a fact that a lot of the folks that represent me that have R next to their names, and sometimes even D's next to their names, they don't come out to the district all too often. I sure know that a lot of those folks that occasionally come out, or if I do get a chance to speak with them on the phone remotely, they're not too willing to listen, and they're not too willing to share their ideas back with you. And so that might be 2 points that I'd add to that.
Well, and two, talking about how to reach your neighbor, right? I mean, I think that's exactly what we're talking about here. And so as I'm sitting here listening to our conversation, I realize that we're all maybe in a different lane. And what I do really is what I consider the purest of the grassroots organization or organizing. I'm a county chair for a county with less than, 30,000 people, which the biggest town has about 15,000 in. But to speak to your neighbors directly, I think we have to, be respectful to them and understand that we are a lot alike in many ways.
Yeah, one thing I think the Democrats need to be ready to do is to provide. Usually when a Republican administration comes in at the macro scale, at the national level, they leave a mess. And so it's the Democrats that continually have to clean up those messes, reduce the deficit. Republicans add to the deficit. I think with Trump tearing as much of the federal government as he has that the Democrats have a unique generational opportunity to rebuild the federal government and relationships with the state governments like we've never had before. It's been 100 years since the New Deal, and government maybe has become rather large and could have been trimmed a little bit, and Trump has done that. But the Democrats have a chance now to speak to their people, to speak to all the Republicans, the disaffected Republicans too, and to show them how they can offer, what they can offer now that it's been reduced to the point that it has been. So it's a unique opportunity for the Democrats. I think it's huge. I hope they grab the opportunity.
Yeah, and one thing I would add is that in a small community where I work in healthcare, and there's about 6,000 people in the town in which the hospital, and they've currently lost all of their funding for Head Start, a lot of their SNAP funding. There was the front line of the newspaper about a month ago talked about all of the Head Start funding was gone. So no more, none, zero for Stevens County out in Breckenridge, Texas. And so that affects when you have a community of 6,000 people and outside the city limits is probably under another, a couple of thousand, and it's a young demographic and they all have children. All of a sudden now they really realize that their kids are not going to get to go to school. They're not getting help or assistance or food or in our healthcare. I work in healthcare, and it has hit the rural communities harder. And so, back to the opportunity, when we see that happening, I think we have to take that as an opportunity to have the conversation with them about what is better for them and what's available. And if they were to vote for Democrats, how that would not have happened. But, how you take that and bottle it and send it out to all the different people, I don't know. But I know that there's an opportunity there if we can figure out the right messaging and do it in a way that's respectful.
And something I might add to this that, we may delete out of here in a second too, but I just wanted everyone to know that King of the Hill is coming back. Y'all know Arlen, Texas, and y'all know Peggy, of course, a public school teacher. I just want to note here that maybe Mike Judge is maybe meeting the moment and maybe going to save us. It could just be a TV show. But I digress, and I think we all have a lot of work to do as well.
So we're real excited about the event once again, 134 PAC and the Rural Texas Summit happening mid-June, coming up in Bastrop. Carla and Steve, want to toss it back to y'all. Is there anything else about the event that we haven't covered yet? And, maybe give us some details on how our listener can get involved and show up there.
Yeah, I'd like to just say that my favorite panel is the agricultural panel. It crosses the rural suburban divide, right? Because the people out in the country are going to grow the food for the cities. So we have an agricultural panel consisting of Judith McGeary with the Farm and Ranch Freedom Alliance. She's the moderator. Clayton Tucker, a rancher up in Lampasas, is also the president of the Progressive Caucus for the TDP, as well as possibly a candidate for the Texas Agricultural Commissioner. We have a young lady who sits on the board of the National Young Farmers Association. It's also president of the Texas Organic Growers Association. Carolina Mueller is going to be there. So that's my favorite panel, and I hope people come see that, because we want to get people that live around the cities growing the food for their immediate neighbors. That would be very exciting. A job opportunity and a healthy one.
Yeah. Well, and I would say that, the entire summit was built around, different ideas and different needs and women running for office, urban, rural conversations, the impact of vouchers. We're going to have an educational panel that Nancy will be moderating, but we're trying to hit those different different areas. And the areas that we focused on, we believe, are the ones that rural Texans are really need to hear. There's a lot more we left out. We couldn't fill it all. Healthcare is a big, but I do think that this summit brings a lot of different elements, a lot of different speakers from a lot of different perspectives. And I really think that There's something for everyone, regardless of your position within the Democratic Party. And I would really encourage young people, independent, disgruntled Republicans, anyone to come out and listen. It's going to be an inviting space. I think it will be a very engaging, enlightening, and fun and interesting. It's almost like you're eavesdropping, in some of these. And Reagan, I can't wait for your panel. I think that's one of my favorites too. And so we just hope that everybody will come out and participate and see what we're all about. And if there's anything we can help them with, we'll be happy to do that. And I do want to highlight the educational panel, of all of the conversations I've had with people as we're organizing this, and I'm making phone calls out to all the county chairs and different activists. And I ask them, what are the things that you're most interested in hearing about? So, the subject matter we chose was not just us. We reached out to people, and really the number one, number two was education right there at the top. So, maybe Nancy and her panel can help us understand what we need to do going forward.
Absolutely. And I'll give a couple shout outs too. You mentioned Ramon Rodriguez out here at Presidio County Chair. Just a fantastic human being, amazing organizer, block walker. I would say at least an acquaintance, if not a friend by now. I'm looking forward to getting to meet him there in the beautiful town of Bastrop. Also, my note that that river is going to be running. So some good times to be able to get a little dunk in the Colorado maybe or something else as well. But of course, I'm looking forward to seeing all y'all there as well. That is, thank you to Carla Schoonover Porter, Steve Bridges, and Nancy Thompson of Mothers Against Greg Abbott and Mothers for Democracy. It's going to be a real blast, and we appreciate all y'all's time here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right on, guys.
That's going to be fun.
Our mission at Progress Texas is to counter the conservative disinformation machine, but they far outmatch us in funding. Oil and tech billionaires and religious right-wing activist groups spend a lot of money keeping their audiences in the dark. If you've come to appreciate the light that we shine on important political news in Texas on a daily, ongoing basis, please know that our regular, everyday listeners form a key component of our funding. And if that's you, we could use your support as a monthly contributor. No amount is too small. Go to progresstexas.org/donate. Thanks to Pan Bingham, Lila McCall, and Marvin Hecker, all of whom are on the team. Thanks all of y'all. Thanks to our guests once again. I'm Chris Mosier for Reagan Stone, signing off, and we'll catch you again next time.
See y'all in Bastrop.